Virgo, learn to control the excess of emotions that will come to you this week. You think you know what it's like to feel too much, but this week will show you a side of Virgo you've never seen up close, the one that holds back, holds back, holds back, until the body remembers there's a limit the mind insists on ignoring. Everyone around you thinks you're a calm person, the one who solves problems, the one who listens to other people's despair and gives an organized, almost surgical response, as if emotion were just another problem with a logical solution. And for a long time, this worked. It worked so well that no one, not even you, realized that behind this calmness there was a dam. A real dam with gates and sluices built stone by stone long before you could name what you were doing. Every time someone cried near you and you didn't cry along. Every time an injustice strikes you, you respond with a plan instead of a scream. Every time pain hit and you organized it into an emotional to-do list, promising to feel it later. The problem is that it arrived later, and it arrived just this week. No one taught you the difference between holding back an emotion and resolving it. In your mind, the two things always seem the same. If you could keep functioning, deliver the work, take care of those who needed it, keep the house in order and the conversation polite, then the emotion was, in some way, resolved, kept in the right place, out of the way. But storing water isn't the same as digesting it, and a dam doesn't return the water cleaner or lighter than when it was received. It only keeps it still, piled up, silent, waiting for an opening that no one has scheduled on the calendar. There is a quantity of water that no dam can hold forever, and the nature of Virgo, the one that analyzes, categorizes, and examines each feeling before allowing it to exist, will find in the coming days the volume that it itself has dammed up for months, perhaps years. You're going to feel it in a strange way, not like an obvious crisis, with tears at the right time and a clear reason. It will be more subtle than that. A disproportionate irritation with something small, a tiredness that sleep doesn't solve, a sudden urge to cry in the middle of a mundane task, washing dishes, driving in traffic, without any visible trigger. And the first thing the Virgo mind will try to do is find a logical explanation for this. It will scour the day, looking for the event that justifies the excess. It will review every conversation, every decision, trying to understand where it went wrong in feeling so much. But what if there's no mistake at all? What if this isn't a flaw to be corrected, but a floodgate finally giving way under the weight of everything she's held for others, while no one, not even once, stopped to ask who was holding it for her? Pay close attention this week to how many times you absorb someone's despair and return calm, as if it were automatic, as if this exchange cost nothing. It does cost something. Every drop you hold back so the other person can breathe easier stays there, dammed up, counting as yours too, even if you've never given yourself the right to feel it as your own. That question alone changes everything, because it transforms what seemed like weakness into something completely different. Something that doesn't yet have a name, something that will only make sense when you understand exactly how this dam was built, brick by brick, silently, and why it chose this week to remind you, without asking permission, that despite all this, it is also made of wet earth, and never of solid stone. Wet earth, not stone, that's the part that hurts the most. Discovering that the structure you thought was indestructible was always made of something that gives way, that cracks, that needs care, and that nobody, not even you, ever gave it that care. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose doesn't talk about suppressing less or feeling more, as all generic content repeats without truly understanding Virgo. It talks about the difference between holding back an emotion and actually processing it, between controlling and understanding. For those who have built an entire dam just to appear strong on the outside, This material presents another way to deal with what they feel, without needing to crumble to finally rest. It's a change in inner posture. It's about the real clarity that Virgo so desperately seeks, without getting lost in the perfection they demand of themselves. You're in the right place to hear this. Still processing what you've acknowledged, still experiencing the discomfort, feeling the weight of the creaking floodgate. It is at this moment that change begins, not after the water has overflowed and you're left alone cleaning up the mess. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. Meanwhile, tell me in the comments, when was the last time you felt that floodgate creaking inside and chose once again to pretend you hadn't heard anything? There's a river flowing inside you that no one has ever seen because you've learned to divert its course before anyone could notice. And this week, that river will find paths you didn't plan for. It will happen in any conversation about any subject when your voice will tremble in a way that takes you by surprise. It will be a small, almost harmless criticism that will hurt as if it were the 10th criticism of the day, because in fact it is, except that you didn't even register the other 9 as pain. You registered them as data, as information to be processed and filed. This one, for some reason, will break through the dam, and you're going to feel exposed. You'll feel for a moment like someone who has lost control of their own narrative. For Virgo, this is almost unbearable, because an organized narrative is what keeps you standing. It's what makes you feel capable, competent, reliable. When emotion breaks through that organization, it's not just a feeling that appears. It's an entire identity that seems to crack for a second. But listen to this carefully, because this is where the story takes a turn. This crack is not the end of who you are. It's the beginning of who you can become when you stop confusing control with self-worth. Think about how many times over the years you've measured your own worth by your ability to not leak. The calmer you could appear in a crisis, the more competent you felt, the more organized your response to pain, the more reliable you became in the eyes of an outside observer. You unknowingly built a silent equation. I am worth as much as I can hold back. But this equation has a built-in error, an error that no ruler can calculate because it's not logical, it's human. Holding back isn't the same as resolving, and the more you hold on, the higher the ruler becomes that defines what for you counts as being okay. There comes a point where just standing, functioning, is no longer enough proof that you are whole. But nobody but you knows this, because on the outside the surface continues to look like a perfectly calm lake. This week, notice a pattern. You'll try at least once to downplay what you felt as soon as you feel it. You'll think it was nothing. I exaggerated. I'll pull myself together quickly before anyone notices. That's the dam trying to rebuild itself hastily, even before you understand what cracked. And every time you do that, the next crack becomes a little easier to appear because the structure never had time to truly heal. There is a huge difference between patching a crack and understanding why it appeared there, exactly at that spot, and not somewhere else. And it is precisely this understanding that will be lacking if you insist on running back to calm before listening to what the water had to tell you. This crack that has just opened up inside you, the one that exposes you, the one that scares you, the one that makes it seem like everything is going to crumble, doesn't have to be faced alone the way you've always faced everything. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose was created precisely for the moment when control cracks and Virgo no longer knows what to do with what's left exposed. It doesn't promise to return the control you once had. It shows you something more valuable, how to transform this exposure into true discernment instead of shame. This content may be taken down at any time. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. After the initial shock of feeling so much, comes a second wave, quieter than the first, and one that almost no one names. Guilt. You will apologize for reacting, for taking too long to reply to a message, for crying without a reason that fits into a sentence. This guilt is an old mechanism. It was born long ago, when feeling too much seemed to be a burden for others, and you learned, without anyone needing to say it aloud, that your role was to facilitate, not to be a burden. So every time the emotion overflows, a part of you is already calculating the damage, already apologizing even before you've finished feeling. But notice something curious. You never demand that same emotional perfection from others. You accept with enormous patience that the people around you feel anger, cry, lose their temper, without judging them for it for even a second. The rigid standard is yours alone, and that standard made by hand, silently over years, is perhaps the greatest weight you carry this week, heavier even than the very emotion that insists on appearing. Imagine a common scene. A friend calls you crying because she argued with her partner over something small, almost silly. You don't think twice before offering comfort. You say it's normal, that everyone has days like that she doesn't need to explain herself. This generosity flows from you with impressive naturalness. Now switch the roles. Imagine you calling someone, crying over a reason that your own mind has already classified as too small to justify tears. The inner voice completely changes tone. It becomes a demand. It becomes, why can't you handle this better? It becomes a mental list of all the times you should have already learned this lesson. This asymmetry is not accidental. It comes from an ancient place, from when feeling seemed like a luxury that other people could have, but you couldn't. Someone, at some point in your history, needed you to be the stable part. And you learned this function so well that it became your identity. But a function is not the same thing as a whole person, and Virgo, more than any other sign, tends to forget this difference. This week, whenever guilt arises after an emotional reaction, try a simple exercise, even if it feels strange at first. Ask yourself what you would say to a friend who had just reacted exactly that way. Notice the difference between that kind response, which comes easily to others, and the harsh response you reserve only for yourself. That rigid standard you only apply to yourself, demanding an emotional perfection you've never demanded from anyone else, is exactly the kind of pattern Virgo repeats until someone clearly points out its existence. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose shows how Virgo can use their own gift of discernment to look at themselves with the same fairness they offer to others, instead of always demanding more of themselves. It's not about lowering the standard, it's about applying it fairly, also internally. This content may be taken down at any time. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. What if what you call a breakdown is deep down something completely different from what you imagine? What if that moment when everything seems to fall apart, the voice faltering, the tears finally falling, the exhaustion no longer disguised, isn't a breakdown, but a relief disguised as a crisis? Think about it. A dam that finally releases water isn't failing. It's doing exactly what nature always asked it to do. Water needs to flow. It needs to find the river, the sea, some destination. Stagnant, it rots. In motion, it is life. Perhaps what you call losing control is actually the one moment of the week when you stop managing other people's feelings and finally let your own feelings exist without asking permission, without planning beforehand, without calculating the impact. And what if that's the healthiest part of it all, not the most shameful? There's a scene that will likely repeat itself, in one way or another, in the coming days. You, alone at some point, feeling that you can finally let go of what you've been holding back. It could be in the car, with the door closed and the engine off. It could be in the shower, where the sound of the water masks any sound you might let out. It could be late at night, when the house is finally quiet enough for you to stop managing anything other than yourself. Notice that even in this moment of supposed collapse, a part of you still chooses the place, still chooses the time, still ensures a minimum of discretion. This is not weakness disguised as strength. It is proof that even at the height of liberation, there is a deep emotional intelligence working behind the scenes, ensuring that you can feel without exposing yourself beyond what you can bear. And that's precisely where Virgo's most beautiful paradox lies. The same capacity for organization that builds dams can also, when well directed, build canals. A canal doesn't stop the water from flowing. It only gives it direction so that it flows without destroying everything around it. The difference between a dam and a canal isn't in the amount of control, it's in the intention behind it, to retain forever, or to guide it to a destination. And perhaps that's the question this week is trying to ask you without words. Through each wave that rises and falls without warning, will you continue building ever higher walls, hoping to never feel this discomfort again? Or will you begin, even slowly, to dig the first channels, accepting that feeling intensely is not the opposite of being competent? It's just the other half of being whole. This relief, disguised as a crisis that you just recognized, is exactly the point where most Virgos get stuck, because they don't know how to distinguish releasing emotion from losing their way in life. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose addresses precisely this distinction: how to let the water flow without it washing away everything you've built. It's not about ceasing to feel controlled. It's about exchanging rigid control for flexible discernment, something Virgo is able to master better than any other sign when it finally learns the right path. This material will be taken down soon. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Perhaps the greatest, most silent lesson this entire week has to teach you isn't about controlling less, nor about feeling more. Perhaps it's about understanding, once and for all, that you were never meant to be a dam. You were meant to be a watercourse, something that moves, that finds its way, that sometimes runs calmly and sometimes strongly, but that was never designed to remain still forever. The perfection that Virgo pursues doesn't have to mean immobility. It can mean something else, more beautiful and more difficult. The ability to let emotion flow without it destroying the surrounding structure. It's not about never letting go. It's about learning that letting go from time to time is also a way of being alive. This week, when the water finds its crack, don't try to rebuild the wall before you understand why it gave way. Let this experience teach you something about yourself that no organization, no list, no logical answer could ever teach. There is an ancient wisdom in everything that flows freely, and you, behind all that careful restraint, have always known it. You just needed a difficult enough week to remember. There is something profoundly spiritual and ancient in observing one's own nature without constantly trying to correct it. Virgo came into this world with a rare gift, the ability to perceive details that no one else notices, to feel nuances that go unnoticed by most people. This same gift, when turned inward with harshness, becomes relentless self-criticism. But when turned inward with compassion, it becomes something close to wisdom. Perhaps this week isn't about a crisis to be avoided, but about an invitation to be accepted, the invitation to get to know the part of you that exists beyond the role of insurer of everything and everyone, the part that feels without apologizing, the part that allows itself to be touched by the world and not just process it with clinical detachment. No dam lasts forever, and perhaps that shouldn't be the goal. Perhaps the true goal is to gradually become a river that knows its own strength, capable of flowing strongly when needed, capable of resting in backwaters when the moment calls for calm, but never again needing to pretend to be made of stone. You are made of water, of earth, of something alive and in motion. And there is a silent beauty in that which no dam will ever be able to completely contain, no matter how well built, how resistant, no matter how many years it takes to be erected with such care and silence.